I honestly wish that I could tell you guys that this is the best Spider-Man animated series of all time, but simultaneously, I was just a tiny little 5-year-old kid picking my nose, scratching my ass cheeks, and just eating Lunchables all the time. And by the way, I actually thought Lunchables were the shiz back in the day. I would sip on Sunny D like nobody's business, but maybe my tiny little reptilian brain back then just couldn't comprehend or tell the difference between a good show and a bad show. And so I liked Spider-Man Unlimited. It is what it is. I grew up watching it, and now, I'll kind of turn it on for my kids now and then. But then again, my kids also don't know anything about life. My youngest one still watches Coco Melon and Blippy. So if that doesn't tell you how frustrating my life is, nothing will. But look, all jokes aside, guys, I'll be honest, it's not the greatest show of all time. And most of us just feel that nostalgic pull when we looked at the figure, whether it was in promotional images or whether it was at the live stream, we just felt that tug, and most of us just bought it for that particular reason. However, there may be people out there that are just completionists, want every Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figure, and so they did go out and purchase it. But look, all in all, I think it's a decent show. If you're a big Spider-Man fan, I think you should watch it. There were some interesting concepts and ideas here for this particular show, and I would be pleasantly surprised to see if they continue to expand on the universe. Like maybe if this particular figure sold incredibly well, maybe they might go back in there and give us some offbeat characters from that series. Only time will tell. I'm just very interested, and I will say this is one of the most fascinating figures that I've received from Hasbro in quite some time, and that's saying quite a bit because some of these figures that I've gone within the last few years have really been mind-boggling. But this figure, I couldn't quite peg my personal perspective on this, and so what I wanted to do was just give you guys my personal thoughts. I wouldn't necessarily call this like an all-out review because I feel like there are already a ton of reviews out there. So I'm not going to get like too specific here, but I'll give you guys just my overall thoughts and my perspective on the figure, whether it's worth picking up or not. And then just maybe like an overall score or rating for the figure. I will say, look, if you guys are interested in like the newer tech, the newer models of action figures for Spider-Man from Hasbro, this is not it. The figure does come with its issues, and I pointed to 3 that I think are maybe not the worst, but they're the ones that really made me a little bit frustrated with the figure. Look, it does come with pinless technology. It does come with the hinge and ball joint at the neck. Butterfly joints, they do the job. Double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, like I said, pinless. There's a cut at the upper arm, cut at the calf. There's a cut at the upper thigh, and then the ankles do exactly what they're supposed to do. I like this figure. It also comes with 6 extra hands. I would have loved maybe a little web accessory piece, but the 6 hands I think is a bare minimum. We've already said that for quite some time. I'm not going to bash you to death. But every single Spider-Man action figure should come with the web crawling hands, the fisted hands, and the web shooting hands, and that's exactly what you're getting here. Some of the key issues that I had with the figure mostly have to do with the fact that it did not include the cell shading, which is kind of weird because there are other figures that we've seen like really heavy cell shading that doesn't make a lot of sense for the figure, or at least it makes sense to an extent. We saw this with the some of the animated X-Men figures. We saw it with the animated Spider-Man action figures. They had a decent amount of shading to them, and sometimes it made sense, sometimes it didn't. But then it doesn't make sense that we didn't get cell shading for this particular figure, considering that is like a big selling point for the animated series. Like the cell shading, they were just throwing it on there like nobody's business, and people that like cell shading were really into it, and so it doesn't make sense that this figure didn't get it. I have seen a lot of people out there that have actually customized the figure themselves with, one of those like fine pointed Sharpies. And in most cases, it actually looks really good. It's a massive upgrade from what Hasbro offered us, so I'm not sure why they didn't do the cell shading here. The other point of emphasis is no toe articulation, which I think should be a standard for Spider-Man Marvel Legends at this point, especially considering we have a new price point, or we have had it now for quite some time. But with new price points, you kind of assume that they're going to keep the upgrades that they've already given you throughout, right? Like you don't expect them to revert back to old body molds or give you old tech for absolutely no reason. And here you see a perfect example of it. And then the last 2 things, or I should say the last thing that really made me want to rip my chest hairs out, has to be the fact that we only got the single hinge, or that single ab articulation, instead of the double, which is something that we've seen for the torsos nowadays. That's really frustrating because that's, again, something that I feel like should be standard for all Spider-Man action figures. And then a little bit of a side note, the gauntlets on the wrists kind of tend to pop off very easily. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily like, I guess it's more about the functionality and, you know, personal opinion rather than the figure actually having any issues, because it is somewhat accurate to the source material, but it just feels really weird. Anytime you're going to try taking or, you know, like swapping hands, sometimes those gauntlets will pop off a little bit, or they'll get in the way of you popping the new hand off. So it's like this whole ordeal. You have to go in there, sometimes even get pliers and try to get them to stay in place without ripping them, because it's really soft and thin plastic. So it's one of those things that it might not be a big issue for you. For me personally, especially since I like posing, I like, you know, playing around with my figures, and I like swapping hands in and out, it was kind of a little bit of an issue when I first got this figure. But overall, what rating would I give it? It's not the worst figure ever. I love the sculpted detail on the chest. I'm not sure if this is like unique to this particular figure or if this is brand new, but the sculpt there was really well done. I absolutely loved it. I love the fact that it's, you know, obviously pinless, double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, and then I love the fact that we're getting butterfly joints. Yes, there are still Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figures that we're getting, like literally figures that are not even out right now, like the figures that are for pre-order that don't have butterfly joints and the single hinge at the torso. So it's a really frustrating situation. You at least get somewhat of an upgraded version of Spider-Man, although I do feel like it still fell short. I feel like this figure should have had toe articulation, webbing accessory. I would have loved the double ab crunch, and then the gauntlets getting in the way from time to time. But overall, like, this is a good, solid Spider-Man action figure, aside from, and I think probably the biggest issue has to be the double abby, which is what I'm referring to, the double ab crunch, okay? If you ever hear any action figure collector out there say the double abby, then you know exactly where it came from, okay? It was your boy, Milk Mustaches. I'm totally kidding. I don't even know if I'm the first dude to say it, but yeah, the double ab crunch, I think, is just like a bare necessity for Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figures. In my personal opinion, should you go out and get this figure, what rating would I give it? Like I said, this is more of just like my thoughts on the figure. I don't know if it's like necessarily a review for it, but just in my personal opinion, I think this figure is like a really solid 7. It's nothing too crazy. There are some concerns with it. There are some downgrades to the figure for absolutely no reason. But then at the same time, you do get some really cool features. You do get the 6 hands total. You get the sculpted chest area, and then you get, you know, the pinless type and everything new that, like I said, should be standard for all Marvel Legends action figures at this point. But we're still getting, for some reason, you know, downgraded figures down the line. So overall, it's a good solid figure. If you're a completionist, I guess you're going to pick it up regardless of what I say. And if you're a fan of the show, definitely. If you're just somebody that likes collecting action figures in general and you have no attachment to the show and you're not a completionist, I think you should probably steer clear of this figure. There are way better Spider-Man Marvel Legends out there that I think could easily fit into your display regardless of what it is that you collect. That's just my personal opinion. I just feel like this one falls short. I believe the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man is absolutely better. And then there's the new symbiote Spider-Man with the new, you know, like articulation and everything. That one's supposed to be better. And there are a number of other body molds out there that I think are clear cut above this action figure. In terms of articulation, in terms of design, in terms of engineer work, I think those are better. But just as I said, if you're a diehard of the show, if you're a completionist, this is a good solid addition into your display. It's a good solid figure. There's nothing like rage worthy per se, but like I said, it's not a perfect figure overall. As always, this is just my personal opinion. This is my personal take. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know this is kind of weird. I don't usually do reviews or like overviews or anything like that, but I just wanted to give you guys my personal perspective on this because I do feel like the figure has either gotten a bunch of hate or a bunch of love from certain creators, and I kind of wanted to set the record straight. I do feel like this is somewhere down the middle. It's like a 7.5 or a little bit under that. It's just a good solid figure. You can pick it up, pose it, and I think you'll enjoy it overall. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys like this type of rambling action figure content, then definitely stay tuned. I do this pretty consistently. I would say like 5 times on a weekly basis tops, and that's me maxing myself out. So hopefully I'm able to pick it up within the next few weeks. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. As always, make sure to enjoy the hobby. Pose your action figures, photograph them, play with them, do all that good stuff. Stay safe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.